During Thanksgiving dinner, I overheard my son-in-law brazenly planning to move his parents into my house for free and send me to a cheap nursing home. The shock of betrayal flashed instantly, but I smiled, letting them pack their things and show off their new home. Their greedy dream will be shattered by my revenge, just, cold, and inevitable. Soon I had 77 missed calls. Too late. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The turkey went into the oven at 11:30, right on schedule. I hummed something formless while basting the skin with butter, a ritual I'd perfected over 4 decades of Thanksgiving dinners. The kitchen smelled like sage and roasting meat, and outside my Ballard windows, November rain streaked the glass in lazy patterns. Alma and Clyde weren't due until 4, which gave me 3 hours to finish the sides and set the table properly. The doorbell rang at 2:30. I wiped my hands on the towel and checked the clock again, certain I'd misread it. Through the front door's frosted glass, I saw 2 silhouettes. When I opened it, Alma stood there with that bright smile she wore when she wanted something, Clyde behind her holding a bottle of wine like a prop. "Surprise! We came early to help." She kissed my cheek, already moving past me into the hallway. "You didn't have to do that." I reached for their coats. "Let me take those." "Oh, we'll keep them." Alma glanced at Clyde, something quick and loaded passing between them. "The house is a little chilly, don't you think?" It wasn't chilly. I kept the thermostat at 72. Clyde extended his hand for a shake that lasted a second too long. "Mind if I use the restroom upstairs, Reuben? That drive from Queen Anne hits the bladder." "Sure, you know where it is." He disappeared up the stairs while Alma followed me into the kitchen, immediately launching into questions about cooking times and ingredient measurements. She'd never cared about my recipes before. Her hands fluttered near the cutting board, picking up the wooden spoon, putting it down, adjusting the salt shaker. Nervous energy radiated from her in waves. Above us, floorboards creaked, not in the bathroom, in the hallway, then in what sounded like the master bedroom. "Dad, should the oven be at 350 or 375? Alma stood directly in my line of sight to the doorway. 350 is fine." "And you're doing stuffing inside the bird? Isn't that risky with bacteria?" I'd cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 37 years. She knew I knew what I was doing. More footsteps overhead, moving from room to room. I heard a closet door open, then close. Alma asked another question about cranberry sauce, words tumbling over each other too fast. I nodded without listening, tracking the sounds from upstairs like sonar pings. "I need to get the tablecloth from the linen closet," I said finally. "Keep an eye on that timer." I took the stairs slowly, my architect's mind automatically noting the third step that creaked. At the landing, I heard Clyde's voice drifting from somewhere down the hallway. Not the bathroom. Near the master bedroom. I froze on the 8th step. "Dad, yeah, it's perfect." His voice carried that excited edge men get when they think they've won something. 3 bedrooms upstairs, huge basement you can convert. We measured earlier. Plenty of space for your workshop. The banister felt solid under my palm, anchoring me. "Couple more months and you'll be living here. The old man has no clue." Clyde laughed, an easy sound that turned my stomach. "Alma found a decent nursing home on the outskirts. Cheaper than the fancy ones, you know. We can afford $3,200 a month easy once we're not paying our rent." My heart kicked against my ribs like something trying to escape. The hallway seemed narrow, sounds becoming too sharp. I heard him say something about original hardwood, about the neighborhood appreciating 15% annually, about selling it down the road if his father got tired of Seattle. I descended the stairs before he could discover me, each step measured, silent, my body moving on autopilot while my brain struggled to process what I'd heard. In the kitchen, Alma was examining the wine glasses, holding one up to the light. "Find it okay?" Her voice sounded tinny, coming from underwater. "Changed my mind. The table's fine without it." She studied my face for a moment, then smiled. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "Just the heat from the stove." Clyde returned 10 minutes later, settling into the kitchen chair like he owned it. "Great house, Reuben. You've really maintained this place. Must be worth a fortune now." "I manage." Dinner became a performance I watched from outside my own body. Alma touched my arm repeatedly, called me Dad with emphatic warmth, expressed concern about me managing this big house alone. Each gesture felt choreographed, rehearsed. Clyde complimented the crown molding, the updated kitchen, the way the dining room caught afternoon light. He spoke about the house the way appraisers do, cataloging value. You ever think about simplifying? Alma cut her turkey into precise squares. Something smaller, easier. There are wonderful communities for active seniors now. Haven't thought about it. Well, you know Clyde and I are always here if you need anything. Anything at all. We worry about you rattling around in all this space. I chewed slowly, watching her performance. She'd always been a terrible liar as a child. When she stole cookies before dinner, her eyes would go wide and innocent, overselling the denial. She was overselling now, her concern pitched too high, landing wrong. They left at 7, Alma hugging me longer than necessary. Love you, Dad. Call me if you need anything. We're here for you. The door closed behind them. I stood in the hallway listening to their car start, pull away, disappear into the rain-soaked evening. Then I walked through each room they'd examined, seeing it through their eyes. The living room with furniture they'd already mentally replaced. The master bedroom they'd converted into his father's space. The basement they'd claimed for a workshop. I sat at the dining table surrounded by dishes and half-empty wine glasses. The turkey carcass looked like something archaeological, stripped and abandoned. Outside, darkness pressed against the windows. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Clyde's voice saying, "The old man has no clue," and Alma's laugh in the background, agreeing. Morning light found me at the kitchen table, still wearing yesterday's clothes, a mug of coffee gone cold between my hands. I'd watched night fade through the window like a slow exposure photograph, my mind cycling through disbelief, hurt, rage, and finally arriving somewhere colder, clearer. On the shelf above the sink, a framed photo showed Alma at 8, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a drawing she'd made of our house. I remembered that day, remembered everything, raising her alone after Marie died, working double shifts at the firm while neighbors watched her after school, paying for Berkeley, the down payment on her first car, co-signing her apartment lease when her credit wasn't established. My chest felt tight, but my hands had stopped shaking somewhere around dawn. The phone rang Friday afternoon. Alma's name lit up the screen. "Hey, Dad, just checking in. You sounded tired yesterday at Thanksgiving." "I'm fine. Are the stairs getting difficult? I noticed you were moving slower." I hadn't been moving slower. "They're fine, too." "Well, I was just thinking about you in that big house. Let me know if you ever want to talk about options, okay? Love you." She called again Sunday evening. "Dad, I was talking to Clyde about retirement communities. They're not like they used to be. Really nice amenities. Gyms, activities, medical staff on site. Some people your age really thrive in that environment." "Haven't given it thought. Just want you to be safe, that's all. That house has so many stairs." Tuesday's call mentioned a friend whose father moved to assisted living and loved it. Each conversation followed the same script, the same gentle pressure disguised as concern. I responded with variations of "I'm managing" and "I'll consider it," giving nothing away. They were laying groundwork, preparing me to accept the inevitable, making me believe it was my own idea. I didn't use the computer at home. Instead, I drove to the public library on Market Street, found a quiet corner terminal, and spent 3 days researching Washington state property law. Page after page of statutes and case precedents filled my notebook in architect's handwriting, precise and measured. Sole ownership meant complete authority. No cosigners, no joint tenancy, no claims from adult children. The house was mine, purchased in 1987, mortgage paid off in 2009, title clear. I could sell it tomorrow if I wanted. Didn't need permission, didn't need to inform anyone. I learned about quick sales and cash buyers, market conditions in Ballard showing median prices at $840,000 for comparable properties. 3-bedroom craftsman homes with updated kitchens move fast, sometimes in days. The market favored sellers. On Thursday, I made an appointment with an attorney. David Rothstein found through the Bar Association directory, no personal connections, no one who knew my family. His office occupied the 14th floor of a downtown building, all glass and polished wood. "Mr. Perkins," he shook my hand, gestured to a leather chair. Mid-50s, silver hair, eyes that had seen every variety of family dispute, You mentioned property questions on the phone. I opened my notebook, turned to the page where I'd written my questions. My house is in my name only. Can I sell it without informing my daughter? Is she a co-owner? No. Then yes, absolutely. You have complete legal authority. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Adult children have no claim on a parent's property unless they're on the title. How quickly could a sale happen? With the right buyer? Market evaluation takes a week. Finding a buyer? 2 to 4 weeks, depending on price point and condition. Closing typically 30 to 45 days. Faster with cash buyers. I wrote this down, drawing arrows between timeline points. If someone is living in the house when I sell, what's the eviction process? His eyebrows rose slightly. Even non-paying occupants require 30-day written notice in Washington. After that, if they haven't vacated, you file for unlawful detainer. But if you sell before anyone moves in, it's the new owner's property. Much cleaner. Can they stop the sale? Object somehow. Not if they have no legal interest in the property. They can be unhappy about it, but unhappy isn't a legal standing. I asked 6 more questions, each one specific, technical, stripping emotion from the equation. This was blueprint work now, specification and sequence. He answered everything precisely, occasionally referencing statute numbers I copied into my notebook. Back home, I cleared the dining room table and spread out graph paper, the kind I used for preliminary sketches. At the top, I wrote Project Timeline in capital letters. Then I began drafting. Phase 1. Play the victim. Appear to weaken. Let them believe their campaign is working. Duration 2 weeks. Phase 2. Legal preparation. Stealth mode. Get market evaluation, find buyer, prepare documentation. Duration 3 to 4 weeks. Phase 3. Execute sale. Sign papers, accept payment, transfer title. Duration 1 week. Phase 4. Inform them the day before closing. 30-day notice to vacate. Duration instantaneous. Phase 5. Vanish. New city, new start. Let them scramble. Duration permanent. I drew boxes around each phase, connected them with arrows showing dependencies and critical path, added notes about potential complications and mitigation strategies, checked and rechecked the timeline against legal requirements, market conditions, seasonal factors. The plan took shape like a building rising from foundation to frame to finished structure. Solid, precise, no weak points. They wanted me erased, warehoused, forgotten in some budget nursing home while they lived in the house I built a life in. Wanted to strip me of dignity and independence like I was already dead, just taking up space. Instead, I'd erase their dream. Let them taste that nursing home budget when they were scrambling for rent money. Their fantasy house sold out from under their grasping hands. I sat back, studying the blueprint of my revenge. Every angle covered, every timing calculated, every legal requirement satisfied. It was elegant in its simplicity, brutal in its efficiency. Outside, December rain started falling, tapping against the windows like applause. I folded the graph paper carefully, locked it in my desk drawer, and went to make fresh coffee. This time, I'd drink it hot. 2 weeks before Christmas, I started arranging the stage. Mail piled strategically on the kitchen counter. A few envelopes opened, most not. Christmas decorations stayed in their boxes in the basement except for a single strand of lights I half-heartedly draped across the mantel. The tree I'd put up every year since Alma was born stayed in storage. When I looked at my handiwork, I saw exactly what I wanted them to see. A man overwhelmed, slipping, losing his grip. Christmas Day, they arrived at 2. I made sure to be halfway up the stairs when the doorbell rang, moving slowly, gripping the banister. Dad let me get that. Alma rushed past me, concern painted thick across her face. At dinner, I paused mid-sentence while describing the roast. Let my eyes unfocus for a moment. What was I saying? The roast, Dad. You were talking about the cooking time. Right. The roast. I touched my lower back when I stood to clear plates, released a small sigh that carried across the quiet dining room. During coffee, I mentioned the furnace. Made this rattling noise last week. Repair guy charged $400 just to look at it. $400, and the stairs seem steeper lately. Takes me twice as long to get upstairs now. Alma and Clyde exchanged a look. Quick, loaded. triumphant. I caught it through my peripheral vision while stirring sugar into my cup. After dessert, Clyde leaned back in his chair with practiced casualness. Reuben, Alma, and I have been thinking. Maybe it's time to consider your options. There are wonderful communities for active seniors. Less maintenance, more social interaction. You deserve easier living after all these years. Alma touched my arm. We just worry about you in this big house, Dad. Alone. It's a lot of responsibility. I let silence stretch between us, appearing to consider. Let them see me looking around the dining room, the high ceilings, the stairs visible through the doorway. I hadn't thought about it, seriously, I said finally. But maybe you're right. This house is a lot for one person. I'll consider it. Their eyes brightened. Alma squeezed my hand. Clyde nodded with satisfaction, poorly disguised as sympathy. They left an hour later, and I watched their car disappear down the rain-slicked street, knowing they were already making plans. January arrived with gray Seattle drizzle. I met Margaret Chen at a coffee shop on 15th, not at the house. Operational security. She arrived exactly on time. Mid-40s, expensive coat, the kind of competence that came from 2 decades in real estate. Mr. Perkins, she slid under the booth across from me. You mentioned needing discretion. I pushed a folder across the table. Property details, maintenance records, recent upgrades. The house is in Ballard, 3 bedrooms, original craftsman details. I need a market evaluation, but I'm not ready for my family to know yet. She didn't ask why. Professional enough to recognize that wasn't her business. In that neighborhood, with those features, I'd estimate $850,000, possibly higher depending on specific condition. We can list as coming soon, preliminary marketing without public visibility. How quickly could it move? With the right buyer, 2 to 3 weeks once it's active. This market favors sellers, and Ballard properties don't last. I signed the preliminary listing agreement at that table, her pen scratching across paper while espresso machines hissed in the background. Nothing public yet. Nothing they could discover. Over the next 3 weeks, I made trips to a storage facility in Georgetown. Industrial area, climate-controlled units, anonymous. Each visit, I carried boxes from the house. Vintage watches my father collected. Important documents. Photo albums spanning 40 years. The irreplaceable things. Every item I removed was something they couldn't claim later, couldn't touch, couldn't sell to furnish their new life in my house. I listed furniture online through anonymous accounts. Antique desk, $400, cash only. Dining room chairs, $350 for the set. Guest bedroom furniture, $600. Told buyers I was downsizing for retirement. Scheduled pickups during weekday mornings when Alma was at work. Each piece sold was another asset stripped from their future inventory. Late January, I returned to David Rothstein's office with the sale documents Margaret prepared. He reviewed them across his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, occasionally making notes in the margins. Everything's solid, he said finally. As sole owner, you control the entire process. Once you sell, they have 30 days maximum to vacate if they're living there. They cannot stop the sale, cannot sue successfully for emotional damages or claims of promises made. You're completely protected. What if they try? Try what? Filing an objection? They have no legal standing. Being unhappy isn't grounds for a lawsuit. Even if they attempted it, they'd lose immediately and likely owe you legal fees. He looked at me over his glasses. Mr. Perkins, you have all the power here. The law is entirely on your side. I left his office with the sun breaking through January clouds, the documents tucked securely in my briefcase. Every step verified, every angle covered, every legal requirement satisfied. Back home, I walked through rooms that looked subtly different now, spaces where furniture used to stand, empty shelves where my father's watch collection once sat. The house felt lighter, stripped of weight, ready for what came next. I made dinner, chicken and rice, simple, efficient. Ate at the kitchen table where I'd drafted my revenge plan 6 weeks earlier. Outside, darkness settled across Ballard, lights coming on in neighboring houses where families lived their uncomplicated lives. My phone buzzed, Alma's name on the screen. Hey, Dad, just checking in. How are you feeling? Tired, I said, but managing. Listen, I have something I want to show you. Can I stop by tomorrow morning? Sure. After she hung up, I sat holding the phone, knowing exactly what came next. The facility brochure. The final push. Right on schedule. The brochure sat on my kitchen table like a stage prop. Glossy paper, cheerful photos of silver-haired people playing cards and doing Tai Chi. Sunset Gardens Senior Living Community in tasteful gold lettering. Price printed bold at the bottom. $3,200 per month. Alma's coat draped across the chair she'd occupied 20 minutes earlier. She'd left it deliberately, would return to discover I'd found her little marketing material. I picked up the brochure, examined the photos. Institutional smiles. Manufactured happiness. The same price Clyde had mentioned on his Thanksgiving phone call, down to the dollar. They'd chosen this place months ago, done their research, calculated their budget based on eliminating their rent payment once they moved into my house. The doorbell rang. I set the brochure down, opened the door to Alma's apologetic face. Sorry, Dad, I left my coat. Her eyes went to the table, to the brochure sitting there in obvious view. Oh, did you see that? A friend whose mother lives there gave it to me. I thought you might find it interesting, just to look at. I picked it up again, flipped through pages. Looks nice enough, clean, organized. Her face brightened like sunrise. Would you want to visit, just to see it? No commitment, just looking. I let reluctance show in my hesitation. I suppose looking wouldn't hurt? She pulled out her phone before leaving, texted while standing in my kitchen. I saw the screen reflected in the window over the sink. He's interested. Scheduling tour. The tour happened the following Tuesday. Clyde drove, Alma in the passenger seat, me in the back like cargo being transported. Sunset Gardens sprawled across 2 acres in South Seattle. Single-story buildings arranged in a rectangle around a central courtyard. Institutional architecture disguised with landscaping. Inside, a staff member named Patricia led us through narrow hallways smelling of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables. She showed us a studio apartment, 250 square feet, bathroom with grab bars, kitchenette that was really just a microwave and mini fridge. A window overlooked the parking lot. Everything's included, Patricia chirped. 3 meals daily in the dining hall, activities, housekeeping, medication management. You'd have complete peace of mind. I asked appropriate questions about meal schedules, activity calendars, medical staff ratios. Alma and Clyde stood behind me, listening, watching, trying to read acceptance in my posture. In the common room, residents sat in arranged chairs facing a television, playing a game show at high volume. An elderly woman with clouded eyes leaned close when Patricia turned away. Don't come here unless you have no choice. Her whisper barely reached me. They control everything. When you eat, sleep, even when family can visit, you lose yourself. I nodded almost imperceptibly, kept my expression neutral. Patricia returned, guiding us toward the dining hall where lunch service was underway. Residents eating at assigned times, at assigned tables, meals portioned identically on plastic trays. Back in the car, I spoke carefully. It's adequate. I'll think about it. Alma twisted in her seat. Really, Dad? You'd consider it? I said I'll think about it. That was enough. They exchanged a look that said everything. Triumph, relief, greed barely contained. When they dropped me home, I watched from my living room window as they celebrated in the driveway. Clyde pumped his fist in the air. Alma laughed, already texting on her phone. Both their faces glowing with victory, they believed they'd won. Evening brought a knock on my door. Tom from next door, 70-something, retired teacher, uncomfortable expression wrinkling his face. Reuben, something odd happened Tuesday. I saw your son-in-law here with an older couple. They had keys, went inside when you were out. I almost called you, but thought maybe you knew. My stomach went cold. What were they doing? Measuring rooms, taking photos. The older man argued with the woman about furniture placement in your living room. They were here about 2 hours. I thought it was strange, but figured maybe you'd asked them to help with something. I thanked him, kept my voice level, asked him to call if he saw them again. After he left, I checked the kitchen drawer where I kept my spare key. Still there. But I remembered Clyde asking to borrow it last spring, said he needed it for a hypothetical emergency. He'd returned it within a week, plenty of time to make a copy. I walked through the house, seeing it differently now. Clyde's parents, Porter and Lydia, had stood in my living room measuring for their furniture, had argued about whether their couch would fit against the west wall, had photographed my kitchen, my bedrooms, my spaces, claiming them mentally while I was out running errands. They weren't waiting for me to agree. They were counting days until they could move in, had already divided my house among themselves, assigned rooms, planned layouts. I was already gone in their minds, warehoused in that institutional building with its grab bars and medication management and controlled visiting hours. I sat in my armchair as darkness filled the room, didn't turn on lights, just sat there imagining Porter measuring my walls, Lydia evaluating my furniture, both of them calculating what they'd keep and what they'd discard, calculating me into that 250 square foot studio with its parking lot view. My phone buzzed. Text from Alma. So proud of you for being open-minded today, Dad. This is a good thing. A new chapter. Love you. I deleted it without responding. Outside, February rain started falling, steady and cold. In the darkness, I smiled. Let them taste victory. Let them think they'd won. Another few weeks, and they'd learn exactly what they'd lost. I called Alma on a Tuesday morning, let my voice carry the weariness I'd been performing for months. I've been thinking about Sunset Gardens. I've decided to do it. Silence stretched across the line for 3 heartbeats. Then her voice came rushing back, pitched higher than natural. Dad, are you sure? We want what's best for you. The falseness rang clear as a cracked bell. I'd heard genuine concern in her voice when she was 8, and I'd fallen off a ladder fixing the roof. This wasn't that. You were right, I said. House is too much? Time to simplify. Oh, Dad. She sounded like she might cry from relief or guilt or triumph. Hard to tell which. Let's meet for lunch tomorrow. We can discuss logistics. Clyde will want to be there too. After hanging up, I sat in my living room, looking at the empty spaces where furniture used to stand, where my father's watch collection once lived behind glass. The house felt lighter now, stripped of everything that mattered. Ready. I allowed myself a brief smile. The restaurant was neutral territory, one of those chain places with predictable menus and booth seating. Alma and Clyde arrived 10 minutes early, already seated when I got there. A folder sat on the table between them, too organized for casual discussion. Clyde stood to shake my hand, his grip lasting a fraction too long. Reuben, Alma told me about your decision. Really glad you're prioritizing your well-being. We ordered. Small talk about weather and traffic filled the space while we waited for food. Then Clyde opened the folder with theatrical precision. So, we've been thinking. He pulled out a document, multiple pages, official looking. While you're settling into Sunset Gardens, Alma and I could stay at the house. Maintain it. Handle any repairs that come up. We drafted this simple agreement, just temporary, to make everything official. I took the document, read slowly. Temporary residence agreement, across the top in bold letters. Language about maintenance responsibilities, utility payments, duration, until permanent arrangements are finalized. Impressive formatting. Clyde's cheap lawyer had done competent cosmetic work on a legally meaningless piece of paper. What about the house long term? I asked. Alma reached across the table, touched my hand. We can figure that out later, Dad. One step at a time. Right now, let's just get you settled and comfortable. I read the agreement again, running my finger along the text like I was studying it carefully. Asked a few minor questions about utility payments and lawn maintenance. Finally, I pulled out my pen. My hand trembled slightly as I signed. Calculated tremor suggesting emotional difficulty rather than strategic manipulation. Handed the pen back to Clyde, who couldn't quite hide the satisfied curve of his mouth. That would really help, I said quietly. I was worried about leaving it empty. You're both so thoughtful. Thank you. Across town, in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment Porter and Lydia had rented for 12 years, different conversations were happening. Porter sat at their kitchen table with a legal pad making lists. First thing, we rip out that old carpet in the living room, he told Lydia. Hardwood underneath probably needs refinishing, but it'll look incredible. Lydia was on the phone with a friend, voice bright with excitement. Yes, finally. Clyde came through. Beautiful house in Ballard. You know that neighborhood, right? We're moving in April. After all these years, we finally have a real place. Porter wrote numbers in the margins of his pad. Once things settle, we take a home equity line. 20, 30,000. New kitchen, updated bathrooms. Property'll be worth $1 million when we're done. They didn't realize they'd never own the property, would never have equity to borrow against. We're planning renovations to a house they'd occupy for exactly 10 days. I met Margaret Chen at the same coffee shop we'd used before. She arrived with a leather portfolio, ordered an espresso, got straight to business. "I have buyers," she said, sliding papers across the table. Young couple, both software engineers. They love the location, want to close fast. $835,000, all cash. I reviewed the offer, noting every detail with architect's precision. Purchase price, closing date, April 15th. Earnest money already deposited. Inspection waived. "Can we keep this completely confidential until closing?" "Absolutely. With a cash buyer, no public listing necessary. No one knows except us and them. Your family won't discover anything until the deed transfers." I signed the acceptance that afternoon, sitting in a coffee shop while my daughter and son-in-law unpacked boxes in their apartment, already discussing which furniture they'd move into their house. The following week, I met with David Rothstein one final time. He'd reviewed every document, checked every contingency, confirmed every timeline. "Once the sale closes April 15th, you serve them notice," he said, laying out the sequence like battle plans. "They have 30 days to vacate. If they refuse, you file for unlawful detainer. Sheriff handles the eviction." "What if they try to fight it? With what standing? They have no legal interest in the property." "That residence agreement Clyde drafted?" He smiled thinly. "Meaningless. You were never obligated to give them permanent possession. They're occupants without ownership rights. The new owners will have you serve notice on their behalf, or they'll do it themselves." "Could they claim I promised them something?" "Verbal promises regarding real estate are unenforceable. Everything requires written contracts, properly executed. That temporary agreement they had you sign gives them no ownership claim, no right to prevent sale, no grounds for lawsuit." He leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Perkins, you're completely protected. They have no legal recourse whatsoever." I asked about potential harassment, about protecting myself after the eviction. He advised documentation only, no direct contact after serving notice. Let attorneys handle any disputes. I left his office with a folder containing everything I needed: sale contract, eviction notice template, sheriff contact information, timeline with critical dates highlighted, every contingency covered, every detail verified. Walked to my car in the parking garage, footsteps echoing off concrete. Above me, Seattle's gray sky pressed down, promising rain. I thought about Porter and Lydia making renovation lists, about Clyde hosting imaginary housewarming parties in his mind, about Alma convincing herself she'd done the right thing. They'd wanted me warehoused, forgotten, erased from my own life, wanted to step into the space I'd built and pretend I'd never existed. Instead, in 10 days, I'd erased their dream completely. The rain started as I drove home, drops spattering across the windshield in irregular rhythms. I turned on the wipers and drove through the gray afternoon, counting down to April 15th. Early April morning arrived with pale sunlight cutting through clouds. I loaded the last boxes into my car: clothes, toiletries, laptop, nothing sentimental. Everything that mattered already sat in the Georgetown storage unit, safe from their grasping hands. The moving truck pulled up at 9:30. Small rental, Alma driving, her face tight with concentration, as she reversed into the driveway. Clyde arrived 10 minutes later in his sedan, Porter and Lydia visible through the windows, their faces pressed forward with eager anticipation. I moved slowly down the porch steps, performing age and reluctance. Alma rushed to hug me. "Dad, you're doing the right thing. You'll love Sunset Gardens. So many activities, people your age. You'll make friends." Over her shoulder, I watched Clyde and his parents already opening their trunk, unloading boxes before I'd even left. Porter caught my eye, smiled with something that might have been pity or satisfaction. Lydia waved, her expression saying she'd won something she'd been chasing for years. "The house is in good hands," I said. Loaded statement. They heard gratitude. I meant irony. I drove away slowly, checking my rearview mirror. Before my car reached the corner, Porter was hauling a floor lamp toward the front door. Lydia directed furniture placement from the porch. Clyde stood with his hands on his hips, surveying his conquered territory. I didn't drive to Sunset Gardens, turned south instead toward Columbia City, different neighborhood entirely. The apartment I'd rented was nothing special. Furnished one bedroom, $1,200 a month, month-to-month lease. Temporary headquarters, not permanent residence. Just needed a place to stay for the final phase. Unpacked quickly. Set up my command center on the kitchen table. Folder with legal documents. Margaret's business card. Attorney's contact information. Calendar with April 15th circled in red marker. From the window, I could see downtown Seattle's skyline in the distance, symbolic of how far I'd traveled from that Ballard house. Back in Ballard, Porter was already rearranging furniture. "This couch needs to go," he told Lydia, shoving my 40-year-old sofa toward the wall. "We'll get something better. Modern. This old stuff makes the place look dated." Lydia was in the kitchen, removing the photos I'd left on the mantel. My graduation from architecture school. Alma at 8, holding her first-place science fair ribbon. Marie and me on our wedding day. Each one came down, replaced with Lydia's decorative choices. Abstract art she'd bought at discount stores. Ceramic figurines. Things with no history or meaning. 3 days later, Clyde hosted friends for drinks. I heard about it from my neighbor Tom, who called confused. "Reuben, I saw people at your house last night. Young couples, music, laughter. I thought you moved to a retirement place." "My daughter and son-in-law are house-sitting," I said smoothly. "Everything's fine." At that party, Clyde held court in my living room, telling stories. "Yeah, finally got the old man settled. He's happy in the home. We're taking care of the place. Worked out perfectly for everyone." His friends nodded, drinks in hand, admiring the house, the neighborhood, his apparent generosity in helping his elderly father-in-law. Alma called twice that first week. I answered sporadically, kept responses minimal. "Dad, how are you adjusting? Do you need anything?" "Fine. Still settling in. Busy with activities here." My detachment was strategic. Didn't give them guilt. Didn't give them certainty. Just enough response to confirm I existed. Not enough to invite deeper conversation. She visited my apartment midweek. I'd given her the Columbia City address. Told her it was temporary housing Sunset Gardens provided during transitions. Seattle's expensive market made the story plausible. I sat in the armchair when she arrived, didn't stand to greet her, answered her questions briefly, offered nothing additional, performed institutional disconnection, the kind of detachment that develops when people lose their autonomy, their purpose, their connection to the life they built. "You seem distant, Dad." "Adjusting takes time." She left after 20 minutes, convinced everything was proceeding smoothly. Called Clyde from her car. I watched from the window, her gestures suggesting relief. He'd asked if I seemed okay, if I suspected anything. She'd told him no, everything was fine. The old man was adapting. Back at the house, Porter met with a loan officer at the local bank branch. "I'm interested in a home equity line," he explained, sitting across the desk with confident posture. "25,000. We want to do some renovations." The officer pulled up forms on her computer. "I'll need the property deed, proof of ownership. It's in transition. My son has a temporary agreement with the previous owner. Should be finalized soon." Her expression shifted subtly, professional skepticism replacing initial openness. "We can start an application, but we can't process the loan without clear title." Porter waved his hand dismissively. "Just get it started. The paperwork's coming." It wasn't coming. Would never come. But he didn't know that yet. Lydia spent afternoons shopping for renovations she'd never complete, visited home improvement stores, collected samples of granite countertops, researched appliance packages that cost more than they'd spent on furniture in their entire marriage. "We can finance everything," she told Porter that evening, spreading brochures across the kitchen table in my house. "Once the equity line comes through, we'll make this place incredible." They were spending money they didn't have on a house they'd never own, counting days in a future that would never arrive. I sat in my Columbia City apartment as evening darkened the windows, folder open on the table before me. April 15th circled in red. 5 days away now. 5 days until the sale closed, the deed transferred, the new owners took possession. 5 days until I served them notice, and watched their fantasy collapse into eviction and scrambling, and the sudden understanding that they'd lost everything while believing they'd won. Outside, rain started falling again, Seattle's perpetual rhythm. I made coffee, stood at the window watching the city lights blur through water, streaming down glass. They were in my house right now, celebrating. Porter probably discussing renovation timelines. Lydia rearranging my kitchen cabinets. Clyde telling Alma how well everything worked out, all of them warm and confident in their stolen space. I raised my coffee mug toward the distant Ballard neighborhood, invisible from here but present in my mind. 5 more days. The title company office had that hushed corporate atmosphere of important transactions happening in beige rooms. I sat at the conference table signing documents, while the escrow officer slid papers across the polished surface one after another. Sale agreement, deed transfer, closing disclosure. My signature appeared in practiced architect's script, each line executed with the precision I'd brought to 40 years of blueprints. Across the table, Sarah and Michael Chen reviewed their copies. Young couple in their 30s, software money, excited about their first house. They'd waived inspection, paid cash, closed in 30 days exactly as Margaret promised. Sarah held the keys like they were precious artifacts. "Congratulations," I said. Meant it. They seemed like decent people who'd maintain the house properly, appreciate the craftsmanship. David Rothstein sat beside me, leather briefcase open. After the final signature, he handed me a sealed envelope. "Eviction notice. Certified mail goes out today. They'll receive it within 48 hours. My phone buzzed. Wire transfer confirmation, $835,000 deposited. I stood, shook hands with the Chens, with the escrow officer, with Rothstein. Drove back to Columbia City while somewhere across Seattle, certified mail began its journey to Clyde. 2 days later, the mail carrier arrived at what used to be my house. Clyde signed for the thick envelope without concern. Return address showed a law firm's name, probably junk mail or misdirected correspondence. He opened it standing in my kitchen. The kitchen where I'd cooked Thanksgiving dinner 5 months ago and overheard his phone call that started everything. The header read, "Notice to vacate premises. 30-day eviction." Notice, his face drained of color as he read the body text. Property sold April 15, 2025. New owners, Chen Family Trust. Current occupants must vacate by May 15, 2025. Failure to comply will result in sheriff-enforced eviction. He saw my name listed as seller. His hands started shaking. Confusion flickered across his face, then disbelief, then something approaching panic. "Alma!" his voice cracked. "Alma, get in here!" She came running from upstairs where she'd been organizing Lydia's closet. Porter appeared from the basement where he'd been measuring for his workshop installation. Lydia emerged from the bathroom, face cream still on her cheeks. Clyde thrust the notice at them. "Read this. Someone tell me this is a mistake." Porter grabbed it first, eyes scanning rapidly. "This can't be right. We have an agreement. Official agreement. You showed me the papers. This says the house sold on April 15th. Lydia's voice climbed toward hysteria. "That was 3 days ago. How could it sell? We live here." Clyde was already dialing my number. It rang 4 times, went to voicemail. He called again immediately. Voicemail. Again. Again. 10 times in 5 minutes. Each call going unanswered, each ring twisting the knife deeper. He called Alma's cell, though she stood right next to him. "Get home now. We have a problem, a serious problem. The house. Your father sold the house. I'm standing right here. Then we need to fix this. Now. Right now." His voice had taken on the edge people get when reality stops making sense. Porter read the notice again, slower this time. "Call your lawyer, the one who wrote our agreement. He'll explain this mistake." But Clyde was already grabbing his keys, heading for the door. "I'm going to Sunset Gardens. He's there. He has to explain this." The drive took 30 minutes through afternoon traffic. He probably broke several speed limits. Burst through Sunset Gardens entrance, rushed to the reception desk where a woman in her 50s looked up with professional concern. "I need to see Reuben Perkins. Family emergency. It's urgent." She turned to her computer, fingers moving across the keyboard. Checked once. Checked again. "I'm sorry, sir, we don't have a resident by that name." Check again. He moved in early April. Reuben Perkins, African American, 67, moved from Ballard. Her fingers moved more deliberately this time, searching multiple databases. Sir, I've checked our resident list, our recent admissions, even our waiting list. Mr. Perkins has never been a resident here. Are you certain you have the right facility? Clyde stood at that desk, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of institutional food drifting from the dining hall, and felt the floor tilt beneath him. His father-in-law had never lived here, had never moved to any facility, had lied about everything, performed some elaborate deception that Clyde was only now beginning to comprehend. He drove to his lawyer's office in a daze. The cheap strip mall attorney who'd drafted the residence agreement looked increasingly uncomfortable as he read the eviction notice, compared it to his own document, checked the county deed records online. Mr. Porter, I need to be honest with you. He removed his reading glasses. This residence agreement I prepared, it has no legal force. The house was never transferred to you or your parents. Mr. Perkins retained full ownership. He had every legal right to sell the property. But we had an understanding, an agreement. You drafted papers. The papers granted you temporary residence, nothing more. No ownership transfer, no obligation preventing sale. As sole owner, Mr. Perkins could sell any time without notifying you. The lawyer's discomfort was palpable. The eviction notice is completely legal. You have 30 days to vacate. Can we fight this? Fight what? His legal right to sell his own property? The lawyer shook his head. You'd need a written contract transferring ownership, or credible witnesses to an oral agreement, or proof of some kind of fraud. You have none of those things. Any motion I file would be dismissed immediately. Clyde drove back to Ballard in silence. In the house that wasn't theirs, had never been theirs, would never be theirs. Porter was calling moving companies. Lydia sat on the couch crying. Alma stared at her phone, trying to process what her father had done. We have 30 days, Clyde said flatly. Start packing. Outside, rain began falling again. The house they'd mentally claimed, renovated in their minds, celebrated with friends, fought for and schemed for and believed was finally theirs, all of it dissolving like smoke. I sat in my Columbia City apartment listening to my voicemail fill with increasingly desperate messages. Didn't answer, didn't need to. The eviction notice said everything that needed saying. May 15th, 30 days, then sheriff-enforced removal if necessary. I made dinner, pasta, simple sauce, ate at the kitchen table with my folder of legal documents open beside me. Everything proceeding exactly as planned. No surprises, no complications. Outside my window, Seattle's evening lights began appearing in the dusk. Somewhere in Ballard, they were having very different conversations than the triumphant ones they'd had a week ago. I raised my water glass toward the distant neighborhood. 28 days remaining. The attorney's office smelled like old carpet and desperation. Alma and Clyde sat across from a lawyer, whose rates were slightly higher than the first one. $1,500 retainer they'd scraped together from 3 different accounts. Let me understand the situation. The attorney reviewed the documents they'd brought. You're claiming an oral promise to transfer the property? Alma leaned forward, hands clasped tight. He's my father. He agreed we could live there. We helped him, took care of everything, arranged his move to assisted living. The lawyer examined the residence agreement, the eviction notice, pulled up deed records on his computer, studied everything in silence for 3 minutes that felt like 30. Ms. Perkins, Mr. Porter, I understand your frustration, but legally you have no case. He set the papers down with finality. No written transfer agreement, no witnesses to oral promises, no evidence of coercion or fraud. The property was his to sell. You were occupants without ownership rights. File something, Clyde demanded. A motion, an injunction, whatever delays this. I can file a motion to stay the eviction, but it will be denied. The court will see clear ownership, legal sale, proper notice. You'll spend money and lose anyway. File it? The lawyer nodded slowly. Your money. But don't say I didn't warn you. They left 20 minutes later, $500 poorer and no closer to a solution. My phone filled with voicemails. Porter's voice evolved over 48 hours from confused to furious to threatening. First message. Reuben, there's been a mistake with the house. Call me immediately. We need to resolve this misunderstanding. Second message, 3 hours later. Call me back. This is urgent. We have an official agreement. Third message next morning. How dare you? After everything we did for you, we had a deal. Fourth message, afternoon. You backstabbing old fool. You think you can treat people this way? Fifth message, evening. You'll regret this. You hear me? You'll pay for what you've done. I listened to each voicemail through my phone's speaker, expression unchanged, made notes about the specific threats, saved every message with timestamps, considered filing for a restraining order, decided it was unnecessary. They'd be out in 30 days regardless. Alma called 20 times a day. I answered occasionally, timing calculated to maximize her uncertainty. When I finally picked up on day 3, her voice came through broken with crying. Dad, how could you? How could you do this to us? I sold my property, I said. Cold, factual. That's my legal right. But where will we go? We gave up our apartment. Porter and Lydia have nowhere. Dad, please, we're family. You should have considered that before planning to warehouse me in a cheap nursing home. Silence. Then barely audible. What are you talking about? Thanksgiving. I heard Clyde on the phone. Every word. The nursing home on the outskirts. The cheaper one, how the old man had no clue. Your plan to move his parents into my house while you put me in a facility for $3,200 a month. The silence stretched longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was whisper-thin. You knew? The whole time, you knew? Every single day, I watched you perform concerned daughter while planning to dispose of me like furniture you didn't want anymore. Dad, I hung up, set the phone down. Didn't pick it up again when she called back 17 more times that afternoon. Porter and Lydia discovered their old apartment had been re-rented. The landlord was apologetic, but firm. I'm sorry, Mr. Porter, but you gave notice in March. I rented your unit 6 weeks ago. The new tenants have a lease. They spent a week searching for affordable housing. Everything in their previous range, up $800 to $2,000 monthly, had wait lists or required deposits they couldn't afford. Finally found something available immediately. $2,800 a month in a worse neighborhood, smaller square footage, worn carpet, aging appliances. Porter's savings account drained rapidly. First month, last month, security deposit, $8,400 up front. Moving truck, $400. Storage unit for furniture that wouldn't fit, $200 monthly. His careful nest egg dissolving like sugar in rain. Lydia took a job at the neighborhood supermarket. First employment in 40 years. $60 an hour, part-time schedule, standing at register scanning groceries for people who looked through her like she was invisible. Her feet ached after 4-hour shifts. She came home exhausted, humiliated, face tight with suppressed tears. Clyde and Alma faced their own crisis. Their previous apartment also re-rented. Searched frantically through listings, finally found availability. $3,200 monthly for a 2-bedroom unit, up from the $2,400 they'd paid before. Smaller kitchen, 1 bathroom instead of 2. Street parking only. Savings went to deposits and fees. Credit cards accumulated charges. Moving truck, storage unit, application fees, utility deposits. The easy life they'd envisioned, living rent-free in an $850,000 house, replaced by financial stress worse than before. Clyde tried finding me, drove to the Columbia City apartment, buzzed repeatedly. No answer. Waited outside for 3 hours, watching the entrance. I never appeared, didn't live there anymore. Was staying with Tom temporarily, my old neighbor from Ballard, who'd helped without asking uncomfortable questions. The building manager told Clyde what I'd instructed him to say. Privacy laws prevent me from confirming or denying residence. Clyde returned to the Ballard house, defeated, started packing boxes. Porter worked beside him in grim silence, their renovation dreams buried under layers of newspaper and tape. The lawyer called a week later with expected news. The motion to stay eviction was denied. Judge reviewed the case, said it was clearly without merit. You still have to vacate by May 15th. They'd spent $1,500 to learn what the first lawyer told them for free. They had no case, no leverage, no options. I stayed in Tom's guest room, monitoring my phone on silent mode, watched the voicemails accumulate, the missed calls pile up. Didn't respond. Nothing left to say. The eviction notice contained all necessary communication. Tom brought me coffee one morning, sat across from me at his kitchen table. You really played them perfectly. They played themselves, I said. I just stopped being their victim. Through his window, I could see my old house 3 doors down. Moving trucks came and went. Boxes piled on the curb. Porter and Lydia loading furniture. Clyde directing traffic with the defeated posture of someone who'd lost everything. May 15th approached like weather you could feel in your bones. Inevitable. Unstoppable. Already written in certified mail and court orders and deed transfers that couldn't be undone. They'd wanted my house, my life, my future. Wanted to erase me and step into the space I'd built. Instead, they got 30 days in a borrowed house, scrambling for apartments they couldn't afford, returning to financial stress worse than before, learning exactly what it felt like to lose everything you'd counted on. I watched them pack through Tom's window, felt nothing but cold satisfaction that the plan had worked exactly as designed. 11 days until eviction. Then they'd be gone completely, and I could move on to whatever came next. June arrived with bills spread across Alma's kitchen table like accusatory evidence. Rent, $3,200. Utilities, $308. Credit cards, minimum payments totaling $650. Car payments on the Lexus and Clyde's sedan, $890 combined. The numbers didn't work no matter how many times she rearranged them. Clyde came home from work, saw her hunched over the calculator, knew what conversation was coming. We're selling the Lexus, he said before she could speak. Can't afford both car payments plus this rent. That's my car. My father helped me buy it. His laugh came out bitter. Your father is exactly why we're in this position. The car goes. End of discussion. Within a week, the Lexus sold for $23,000. Money that felt substantial until they applied it against credit card debt from the move, first month's storage unit fees, deposits they'd never see again. Their planned summer vacation to California canceled, every luxury stripped away, every comfort reduced to survival calculation. Across town, Porter sat at a computer, scrolling through job listings. Retail associate, warehouse worker, customer service representative. Entry-level positions he'd have laughed at 5 months ago. He submitted applications methodically. 30 years selling cars, management experience, solid sales record. His resume looked impressive until you noticed the dates, calculated his age, realized he was 64 and fighting against unspoken discrimination. Callbacks came rarely. One interview at a hardware store, manager half his age reviewing his application with barely concealed skepticism. We're looking for someone with more recent experience in retail. Code for younger, code for cheaper, code for someone who wouldn't remind them daily that age rendered experience worthless. Porter drove home in silence, pride shattered into pieces too small to reassemble. Told Lydia that evening, voice flat with defeat. 30 years I sold cars, made decent money, provided for us. Now I can't get hired at a gas station. That kid looked at me like I was ancient history. Lydia knew the feeling, stood behind a supermarket checkout 8 hours daily, scanning items while customers complained about prices or bagging speed or the line moving too slowly. $16 an hour. After taxes, roughly $2,100 monthly. Their rent alone was $2,800. She came home each evening with feet aching from standing, back tight from repeated movements, exhaustion she'd never experienced as a housewife. The beautiful house in Ballard she'd bragged about to friends, told everyone they were finally moving up in the world. Now an embarrassing topic she avoided whenever old acquaintances asked questions. Mid-June, Alma drafted an email to her father, wrote it, deleted it, rewrote it, trying to find the right balance between apology and appeal, accountability and excuse. The final version read, Dad, I know you're angry. I understand now. But this was Clyde's idea from the start. He convinced me it was best for everyone. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, can we talk? I'm still your daughter. That has to mean something. She sent it at midnight, unable to sleep, stomach tight with anxiety. Checked her inbox compulsively for 3 days. Finally, on the 4th day, a response. Single line. Downtown coffee shop, Saturday, 2 p.m. The coffee shop occupied a corner on Pine Street, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood tables. Reuben arrived 20 minutes early, chose a corner table with his back to the wall, ordered black coffee, waited. Alma arrived exactly at 2, looking diminished. Cheaper clothes, makeup less precise, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the styled waves she used to maintain. She slid into the seat across from him, immediately launching into speech. "Dad, thank you for meeting me. I've missed you so much. These past months have been—" He said nothing, sipped his coffee, waited. She continued, words tumbling out in the prepared speech she'd rehearsed, apologies mixed with justifications. "It was Clyde's plan. I just went along because I thought it was right. I never meant for this to happen. We're struggling. I lost my father and our security. The apartment costs more than we can afford. Clyde wants to sell my car. His parents had to move to Idaho because they couldn't make rent here." He let her finish, set his coffee cup down with precise care. "You chose your husband over your father." His voice came out calm, surgical in its precision. "I gave you everything. Paid for Berkeley when I could barely afford it. Helped with your first car. Down payment on your wedding venue. After your mother died, I raised you alone. Worked double shifts. Made sure you had what you needed." "Dad, I know, but—" "And you repaid that by planning to warehouse me in the cheapest facility you could find while you took my home. You measured rooms for furniture. Clyde's parents toured my house like they already owned it. You discussed which nursing home would be most affordable on your budget." Alma's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I was so wrong. But we're family. Please help us." "I heard every word Clyde said on Thanksgiving. I knew your entire plan. I watched you perform concern while planning my disposal. I simply protected myself. But Dad—" He stood, placed a $5 bill on the table for the coffee. "We were family. You ended that when you decided I was disposable. Learn to live with your choices." He walked out while she sat crying at the corner table, the $5 bill between them like a severance payment. Outside, summer sun warmed the sidewalk. He walked to his car without looking back, drove toward the apartment that was temporary but sufficient, felt nothing but finality. The consequences they were experiencing weren't his revenge. They were the natural result of their own greed, colliding with reality. He'd simply refused to be their victim. Behind him in the coffee shop, Alma sat at the table, long after her tears stopped, staring at the $5 bill, understanding finally that some choices couldn't be undone, some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, some relationships couldn't survive what hers had done. The real estate agent handed me keys across the closing table with a professional smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Perkins. Beautiful choice. You'll love this neighborhood. Fremont condo, 1 bedroom, 850 square feet. Modern construction, 9th floor, balcony facing west toward Lake Union. $420,000. Exactly half what the house sold for, leaving me $400,000 plus retirement accounts. Financial security restored on my own terms." I drove directly to the condo, let myself in, walked through empty rooms that echoed with possibility rather than loss. The balcony became my first stop. Lake Union stretched below, sailboats cutting white trails across blue water, downtown skyline visible in the distance. Smaller than the house, drastically smaller, but it felt right-sized instead of empty. Moving in took a week. Minimal furniture, purchased new. Fresh start, not recreation of the past. I retrieved items from the Georgetown storage unit selectively. Photo albums with recent pictures of Alma removed, important documents, my father's watch collection, a few pieces that meant something beyond monetary value. Set up a small home office with my old drafting table. Considered part-time architectural consulting. Everything deliberate, chosen, mine. Not inherited, not shared, not threatened. Saturday morning, 2 weeks after moving in, I walked to the local farmers market. Fremont had that neighborhood feel, walkable, community-oriented, different from Ballard's residential isolation. I was ordering coffee from a vendor when someone called my name. "Reuben, I didn't know you were in this area now." Tom, my old neighbor, holding a bag of vegetables. We found a table at the edge of the market, sat with our coffees while shoppers streamed past. "How are you doing?" he asked. "We've missed you in the old neighborhood." "I'm well, Tom. Needed a change and simpler space." He nodded, studied his coffee cup, clearly weighing whether to share something. Finally, I hate to mention it, but I heard through the neighborhood grapevine, your daughter and her husband are having difficulties. Financial stress, apparently. Talk of separation. I sipped my coffee, showed no reaction. And his parents moved away. Someone said Idaho? Couldn't afford Seattle anymore. People make their choices, I said evenly. Sometimes those choices have consequences they didn't anticipate. That's life. How's your garden coming? We talked about tomatoes and pest control for 10 minutes before parting ways. Walking back to my condo, I felt no triumph about the information, just acceptance. They'd chosen their path, were living with the results. That evening, I checked the old phone, the one I'd given the family, kept charged but silenced. Hadn't looked at it in weeks. The notification light blinked. New email. From Alma. Dad, I know you probably won't respond. Maybe you won't even read this, but I have to try one more time. Clyde and I are separating. The financial pressure destroyed us. His parents left for Idaho. Cheaper cost of living. I have nothing left. Could you help? Even just part of the house money? I'm still your daughter. That has to mean something. Please. Alma. The phone log showed 77 missed calls. Months of accumulation. Desperation building like pressure behind a dam. I read the message twice. No anger, no satisfaction, no guilt. Just finality. Closed the email without responding. Held the power button until the screen went dark. Placed the phone in my desk drawer. Closed it. That chapter finished. The following week, I attended a meeting for the Retired Architects Volunteer Network, program connecting retired professionals with nonprofits needing pro bono design assistance. I presented my credentials, discussed availability. The coordinator leaned forward with interest. Mr. Perkins, your experience is exactly what we need. Rainier Valley Community Center wants to expand, add a multi-purpose room, update their facilities. Would you be interested in leading the design consultation? I agreed immediately. Purpose without pressure. Contribution without exploitation. Using my skills for genuine need rather than defending against betrayal. Found satisfaction in that. August evening, sun setting over Seattle in streaks of orange and pink. I stood on my balcony, coffee in hand, watching sailboats return to the marina. Lake Union reflected the sunset like liquid metal. The space around me was smaller than the house, dramatically smaller. But it felt expansive emotionally. Freedom rather than isolation. Security I'd built rather than security someone could steal. I thought about the past 10 months. From that Thanksgiving dinner when I overheard Clyde's phone call, through the months of performance and legal preparation, to the eviction and its aftermath. Not revenge, self-preservation, not cruelty, refusal to be discarded. In my desk drawer, that phone with 77 missed calls. Testament to desperation I once would have felt obligated to answer. Now felt obligation only to myself. They'd wanted to warehouse me, take my home, erase me from the life I'd built. Instead, they'd lost their marriage, their security, their dreams of easy living, had learned what it felt like to be disposable. I hadn't done that to them. They'd done it to themselves. I'd simply refused to cooperate with my own erasure. Sipped my coffee, watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that would fade to darkness. Smiled, not with cruel triumph, but quiet contentment. I'd protected my dignity, secured my future, refused to be a victim. The sailboats reached the marina. The sky darkened. The city lights came on one by one. I finished my coffee, went inside, closed the balcony door behind me. Tomorrow I'd start sketching preliminary designs for the community center. Next week I'd explore more of Fremont, find new routines, build a life that belonged to me alone. The past was finished. The future was mine. And that was enough. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.